WACP, the place to be, for we are the AP people. And some place to be on a conference call in Atlanta, and we're talking to Ross Marvin. I mean, Ross Marvin is a very talented brother. I'd like for him to introduce himself, and we're going to go into some deep, heavy conversation about what's going on. Ross Marvin, tell us, you wear a lot of hats there. Tell us about some of them.
Okay. I'll tell you about at least 3 or 4. Currently, I want brothers and sisters to know, by the way, greetings, family, and greetings to you, Brother Hassan. And I give thanks for the great work that WACPtv doing for our community.
Thank you.
Greetings, brothers and sisters. Yes, you're welcome. My name is Ross Marvin. I'm the current president of the Julius Nyeri CBPM UNIACL, Atlanta Division 421. I represent the 9th successor of the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey, who's the 10th President General for the UNIACL Global Government, established by the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey on August 31st, 1920, and the founding parent body. Also, another hat that I wear, I also represent the over 13,000 Georgians here in Georgia during the 1920s, who was part of the 26 divisions of the UNIACL of the government fosters black people. So I represent those brothers and sisters, also being official division, Atlanta Division 421, official division of the government. Another hat I wear is the hat for the collective black people movement as the design engineer for the CBPM website and the CBPM organization, applying engineering to the black movement. So we invite brothers and sisters to visit www.cbpn.org. And also the youths them know me as the Rocket Man, who build the high-flying rockets, the only person who build the high-flying rockets in the world, number one on Google.
Yes. All right.
That's just a few other hats.
All right. Well, I tell you, I had the pleasure of seeing those rockets actually take off myself, and what a pleasure. Ross Marvin, we are in the 21st century. However, we'd like to go take a trip back and talk about a little history to bring us up to where we are right now. Predating Marcus Garvey, can you start there and sort of let us know what was the air prior to Marcus Garvey coming, and give us some of his history in terms of what he did for us as a people?
Oh, gladly, Brother Hassan. Well, we know today that from the beginning of time, African civilization on the continent had all the different libraries and the universities. And we civilized the earth. We gave the earth mathematics, science, and everything you know from medicine and everything else. And during that time, there was great civilization throughout the continent of Africa. Far up to this time, to answer your question specifically, what happened before Marcus Garvey came on the earth? As we know, Africans were brought to the West and enslaved in the West. Not all Africans, but we know Africans was here in the West before we were brought as through the slave trade. So what has gone on is that it took from the 1400s all the way until the middle of 1880s for Europeans to reach into the heart of Africa and divide up Africa amongst themselves. So all of Africa was colonized except for Ethiopia and Liberia. All of Africa was colonized by Europe. Liberia was a colony of America. Ethiopia was the only country in Africa, part of Africa, that wasn't taken over by the Europeans. So this was during the 1880s, and we all know that the Berlin Conference from 1880 to 1888. And what happened is that we as Africans know coming out of being enslaved for over 400 years now, just to see now Europe has taken over the continent of Africa. And in them taking over, meaning through colonization, colonizing the majority of the continent, is like, imagine someone taking your mom and just taking over control of our mother, Africa. So all over the world, from South America, Europe, wherever Africans were, the United States and Caribbean formed a lot of black organizations whose mission and ultimate aim was to recapture Africa for us as African people. Because during this time, African people were being killed all over the earth. Whether it was in the United States, in the Caribbean, we were being lynched, burnt, many things bad for us as our people went through. So there rose up a lot of people, brothers and sisters, who spoke up for us as a people. And one of them, the most popular one, was the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey, who left Jamaica in 1910, born August 17, 1887, St. Anne's, Jamaica. Grew up in Jamaica. His father had an extensive library, and Marcus Garvey had opportunity to study extensively. He loved to read, and he said that we all should always read every day before we go to sleep at night. But Marcus Garvey, by the age of 16, Marcus Garvey left St. Anne's, Jamaica, and went to Kingston. And he worked as an apprentice in a pincher shop. When he moved to Kingston, he became the youngest Jamaican foreman in the printing company he worked at. Marcus Garvey was so advanced at his young age that he was a natural leader and very wise. He ended up joining a group in Jamaica, a group of lawyers that protested against the treatments of blacks in Jamaica by England. And then he went out on his journey. He left Jamaica and went to Central America, where wherever he went, he seen we are people, no matter where we were. He's seen us being in subjugation by the European system and white supremacy. Marcus Garvey had a chance to go to England in 1912 and to spend there until 1914. And he went and he traveled and he visited over 15 countries in Europe. But no matter where he went, black people was at the bottom of the society.
Now let's remind the audience that at that time we didn't have television to be able to show us what was going on the earth. So by Marcus traveling on his own, he was able to find out what was really going on firsthand.
Very important point, Brother Hassan, very important point, because when he was in Central America, he visited over 5 countries there. So, and then when he returned from England to Jamaica in 1914, within 5 days of returning, he got together with Amy Ashwood Garvey, and together they formed the UNIA in 1914 in Jamaica within 5 days of returning to Jamaica. Because Marcus Garvey had an opportunity to become part of the white Negroes in Jamaica, the educated Negroes, and they just go ahead and live in society and live a good life and have a nice house and everything. But he chose not to. He said, our people struggle is his struggle, not in those words. But Marcus Garvey said that Africa for the Africans at home and abroad. And his main principles was principles of self-reliance, race first, and nationhood. We Africans having a strong nation on the continent of Africa. And those are the things Marcus Garvey worked towards establishing. He said, where is the black man government? Where is the black man king? Where is the black man nobles and high officials? He searched throughout the world during that time. He couldn't find them. So Marcus Garvey said, I declare I will establish the black man government. And in 1915, he was communicating with Booker T. Washington in the United States, and they had very similar policies. And Marcus Garvey was looking forward to coming to the United States to meet Booker T. Washington, but so happened in November 1915, Booker T. Washington had passed away, and Marcus Garvey eventually came to the United States in 1916, where he resided in Harlem, New York. And upon coming to New York, Marcus Garvey traveled to the United States, and I think he visited 36 states in total, and he seen black people in the same situation. So he told brothers and sisters when he left Jamaica that he was going on a fundraising tour for the UNIA in the United States. But upon reaching to the United States, he decided to move the headquarters of the UNIA from Jamaica to Harlem, New York in 1916. It took from 1916 to 1920, where the membership of the UNIA grew from 500 members to over 10 million members in 4 years, once Marcus Garvey moved the headquarters of the UNIA to the United States. And UNIA divisions formed all over the world, from Africa to Europe, South America, Australia, Central America. There has never been a brother or sister that walked up on the earth that was able to unite black people throughout the whole world like Marcus Garvey. And so this brought up to the time now, August 1920, where now Marcus Garvey calls the first convention, and our ancestors, and we have to understand the brothers and sisters that work closely to Marcus Garvey, because it wasn't him who did it by himself. He was the leader of it, but he had a close group of brothers and sisters that worked with him. And those brothers and sisters during that time got to know known as the parent body of the UNIA, the brothers and sisters that was there aiding Marcus Garvey. So in August 1920, what our ancestors did, they worked from the beginning of the month to the end of the month, from sun up to sundown, day and night, because Marcus Garvey had the knowledge based upon international laws. Using international laws, Marcus Garvey said, we as black people, we don't have a representative in the world. And if we're going to follow what it says in the League of Nations Declaration on Humanity, then the black man does not have a spokesperson. So therefore, we have to establish our own government, because before 1920, in America and the United States, white people made fun of black people because they said, we are people that don't have a flag. We didn't have a flag that represents the black race before 1920. So our ancestors worked the whole month of August 1920, and they did five things that in modern times any government that forms has to do. And modern times, I mean within the last 1,000 years, the United States of America had to do the same thing. Kosovo, who was just formed recently, had to do the same thing. The Washington Nation had to do the same thing. All governments had to do this in order to establish within modern times. And Marcus Garvey knew this knowledge, and we as a people, we got to know the same knowledge too. And what our ancestors did during this month of August 1920 is those five things. What happened on August 1st, 1920, that's when a plebiscite is one of the requirements to establish a government. A plebiscite is where brothers and sisters declare publicly, and during those times, in order to declare a government, you had to have a minimum of 20,000 brothers and sisters. On August 1st, 1920, Marcus Garvey got together over 25,000 brothers and sisters at Madison Square Garden, where Madison Square Garden couldn't hold the crowd, and the crowd was extended out onto the streets in New York City to have the opening day of the first convention of the UNIACL. By the end of the month, there'll be more than an organization. There'll be a government by August 31st, 1920. So that was the first thing that happened on August 1st, which is a plebiscite, the first thing that has to happen. Also, the second thing that happened that our ancestors did in 1920 was on August 13th, 1920, the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey and the founding parent body of the UNIA revealed to the world the red, black, and green flag as the flag of our race. So no more could the white man tease the black man and say we don't have a flag that represents our race. So when we see the red, black, and green flag, brothers and sisters, we have to respect it and honor it as the flag of the government our ancestors set up for us. It's not just a cultural symbol. And this flag has a pledge that we all got to know, the pledge to the red, black, and the green. We know Babylon pledged, but do we know the pledge to the flag of the government that our ancestors created for us? So that was the second thing our ancestors did. Another thing that has to be done by our time in establishing a government in modern times is that you have to have a declaration, just like America had their Declaration of Independence. Our ancestors issued the Declaration of Rights of Negro Peoples of the World on August 15th, 1920, where it listed in this declaration, it was over 54 declarations that we have the right to. And one of the rights that we have, and many of those rights, those 54 rights, we still don't get that respect based upon international laws from other countries and governments. This is one of them that we don't get respect from, and that is we as black people have the right, and this is in our declaration, to be our own representatives and to have our own ambassadors and to be our own government. That's based upon international laws. So we declare to the world that no other race can represent us as black people. So if they have the United States government and they might have an ambassador in Italy, that ambassador in Italy doesn't represent the interests of black people. So Marcus Garvey was always able to argue successfully and had this as one of our declarations. The fourth thing that has to be done for any government started up in modern times is all governments must have a constitution. And our ancestors released the constitution for the government of the UNIA global government during those times. The fifth thing that has to be done is recognition from other governments, because the governments would exist if they don't recognize you, then you're still not part of the government family. And during this time, our ancestors had over 40 different ambassadors to different countries in the world with government offices. Dr. Robert Brock in the late 60s, early 70s was the last person to travel on a UNIA government passport. So this government was established for us. These were the things that was done during the month of August 1920, that at the end of the month, August 31st, our ancestors did all the things legally required by international laws. And since the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey, the black movement does not involve to the greater level our legal rights based upon international laws. But what happened is Marcus Garvey said he declared he'll establish the black man's government, and he did on August 31st, 1920. The Universal Negro Improvement Association, African Community League's world government was formed, and this government is a government for all Africans at home and abroad, and only two world governments that was formed in the world, and one is the Vatican, and the only other government that is established as a world government based on their constitution is the UNIA government that was established for us by our ancestors. So in this time, that was the first convention of the UNIA, and since that time in 1920, Marcus Garvey was voted on August 31st, 1920, as the first President General. So in our government, the black government, it's not a president that is the top, but the name of the top person in the government is the President General. And Marcus Garvey was voted in as the first President General for the government on August 31st, 1920. And his term served from August 1920 all the way until 1940, when he passed away to the land of our ancestors. And as also Marcus Garvey was declared on that day the provisional president of Africa, because during that time, 1920s, the only independent territory on the continent of Africa was Ethiopia. That was the only place that was run by us as Africans. So Marcus Garvey was proclaimed provisional president of Africa at the same time, August 31st. And ever since that day, August 31st is known as International African Independence Day, And we, brothers and sisters in this time, have to recognize that day on August 31st. And don't go there, because that's our Independence Day, not July 4th. August 31st is when our government is formed. And based upon international laws, whenever a government is formed, that government exists for eternity, unless there are laws, international laws, or the people who formed it decided to, by law, dissolve the government. And there has been no such thing as happened during that time. As a matter of fact, the government has been intact from that time until this time. The parent body, we're in the 10th administration of the government, and the Honorable Senghor Jawar Baye is the 10th President General for the UNIA global government in our time now, and he's leading efforts with great programs that UNIA have going on for black people when it comes to race first, self-reliance, and nationhood. So that's a look at it about what happened that brings us to this time now, Brother Hassan.
Okay, that's very, very vital. Now, you mentioned a word that our listening audience need to look up, because we hear very little about it being spoken, and that is plebiscite. It's spelled Plebiscite. Tell us about that.
Well, basically, a plebiscite is used in the forming of governments, and basically what it is one of the requirements, because if you're going to form a government, it's like what they have now during, if you're forming a business in modern times, you're going to have to put a notification in the newspaper and letting everybody know you're forming this business, and if anybody objects to it, it's a public notice. It's similar to that. But a plebiscite is a public notice that governments use when forming a government.
Okay, now,
so, yes.
In terms of this plebiscite, we as a people have made several steps towards bringing about this plebiscite, and we just want to talk briefly about it. There's several organizations who have come to the table and worked on attempting to get a plebiscite. This has been as early or as late as the 2000, 2006, 2007. Let's talk a little bit about that history. WADU. Tell us about WADU and PADU. And how did that come about, and what is that all about, and where are we right now?
Okay. First of all, I want to say that I'm a member of WADU and PADU, but I'm not a spokesperson for the organization, and I do not represent the two organizations officially. But I do promote both of the organization and support the works that they do and that are very vital for our people.
Okay. Now WADU is World African Diasporan Union.
Yes, that is correct.
And PADU is Pan-African Diasporan Union. Okay.
Right.
So, yes, go ahead.
Let me go ahead so we got to understand how things come into formation. And if we look at how PADU came into formation, we see that in 2003, the African Union finally recognized the diaspora as part of Africa. Before 2003, the diaspora wasn't seen as part of the African diaspora. And still today, we Africans in the diaspora have a long way to go, because we never chose to leave Africa. And because we never choose to leave Africa by the law of right to return for people, indigenous people, therefore we have the international legal right to return to Africa. But we're not given that right, or our right is to return to Africa is not being honored by the current governments in Africa, meaning that we are citizens not of a specific territory or specific country in Africa today, but we are citizens of the whole continent of Africa. But in order to return, we're going to have to apply for visa and all kind of stuff, and we don't have the right the right to own land in certain parts of Africa. So what happened is that in 2003, the African Union finally made the move to bring the diaspora. We welcome back the diaspora to Africa by creating the sixth region of the African diaspora. Currently, Africa is divided up into 5 regions, and they created a 6th region in 2003, and they sent out word to organizations in the diaspora saying that the diaspora has come together as one, and through traditional African means, elect representatives throughout the diaspora. And there is, I believe, 20 seats available in the African Union for Africans in the diaspora to actually sit on the African Union as this part of the 6th region. So, but the diaspora has come together in one. So since that declaration in 2003, we see the forming of the World African Diaspora Union and the Pan-African Diaspora Union. But the Pan-African Diaspora Union is a newer form organization. The 2 organizations that were formed to specifically deal with bringing the diaspora together after that declaration was the SRDC, the 6th Region Diaspora Caucus, and WADU, the World African Diaspora Union. And the 2 organizations, SRDC and WADU, were supposed to come together as one. And I think they're currently still working on bringing the organizations as one. But PADU was an organization that was formed out of the coming together of the 2 organizations. And PADU is an organization that is made up of organizations throughout the whole world. It's not made up of government officials or individuals, made up of black organizations that represent the people throughout the world.
Now tell us where some of these organizations are, because we need to get an idea of how large, how expansive this is.
Yes. The Pan-African, we as a people, African people, we're so extensive that I would never be able to tell you the full scope of it. It's bigger than my mind can see. But I can tell you definitely in general, the Pan-African Diaspora, the Pan-African PADU, Pan-African Diaspora Union, is made up of organizations from Nicaragua, black organizations in Costa Rica, Belize, throughout all of Central America, Panama, South America, Colombia, black organizations from Chile and throughout South America, black organizations here in the United States of America, black organizations in Canada, black organizations in Europe, and the Far East, and even some organizations, black organizations, members from the Middle East. So PADU has over 60 different organizations throughout the world that is a part of this body called PADU, Pan-African Diaspora Union.
Okay, so basically we're talking about a lot of organizations who are attempting to come together, and this has partially happened, but something fell through in a meeting in Florida. Can you speak on that?
I couldn't speak upon it, but what I can say about it is that it's still going, because it's a requirement that the diaspora come as one in order for us to enter the African Union.
Okay.
So what I can speak upon is the continual work then that's going on. For instance, just last month, May 2012, they had the gathering of the Pan-African diaspora organizations in South Africa from May 17th to May 25th.
Okay.
And there was, and they initially 2010 to 2020 was declared the decade of the diaspora. But from this gathering now, the decade of the diaspora starts January 1st, 2013, and goes all the way to December 31st, 2023. And the reason why they changed the dates is because from the conference, the racism conference that happened in South Africa in 2001, the United Nations declared 2011 as the year of the African diaspora. And there were certain programs and certain implementations from the 2001 conference that was supposed to be implemented, and it wasn't implemented on the scale to benefit African people. So they're going back to the table and retrying it again for the next 10 years. But this is something for all of us as Black people, and we all got to take part and join these organizations, support these organizations, and we Africans in the 6th region that's in the diaspora has the responsibility to come together as one so we can occupy those 20 seats in the African Union and build a strong Black government in Africa, as Africa united together as one country, one government. So we will be that powerhouse that the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey spoke about.
All right, then. Well, we have covered quite a bit of territory, and we cannot close the book or close the page on this conversation. We're going to continue it. However, at this time, I would like, if you could, close us out with what's coming up here in Atlanta in August, and how important is that in terms of moving us forward?
Oh, gladly, Brother Hassan, and thank you for asking that very vital question. As I had spoken earlier, August 1920 was the first convention of the government, where at this time now the UNIA grew to over 10 million members around the world and over 1,100 divisions around the world. And to be a division of the UNIA, in those days, you had to have a minimum of 500 members. So they had a lot of chapters that had less than 500 members that was on their way to becoming divisions and things. So that was the first convention of the government of the UNIA. And this year in 2012, we're the 55th convention of the government of the UNIA. And we are part of coming now in 2014, 100-year tradition. So we're at 98 years now since the founding of the UNIA in Jamaica and so on. And this centennial for the UNIA is going to be big. But right now, in the 98th year of the forming of the UNIA, is the 55th convention of the government. And during that time, we got to understand that out of the 1,100 divisions, about 50% of the divisions, 500 plus, was in the United States. And divisions were throughout the whole United States. There were more divisions of the UNIA in the South than in the North. For instance, now Louisiana had the most divisions of the UNIA. And remember, to be a division of the UNIACL, you had to have a minimum of 500 members. And in Louisiana, they had 74 divisions of the UNIA.
74 times 500, at least that many in Louisiana alone.
Exactly. But remember, even though you had 74 divisions, you probably had at least 25 to 50 different chapters who had less than 500 divisions that was working their way
to become a division. Yes.
Okay. In Georgia, where we are, Brother Hassan, the home of WACPtv and the Collective Black People Movement, and where Atlanta Division 421 is, we had 26 divisions of the UNIA. And what happened during those times is that never ever, the first 1 to 54 conventions never ever took place in Georgia. Even though they had 26 divisions back in the 1920s of the government of the UNIA in Georgia, those 26 divisions together were not able to bring a convention to Georgia because Georgia wasn't in the top 5, I guess, as far as, popular cities than where they used to do this, even though 26 is a lot.
Yes.
But Louisiana had more. New York, the northern cities, they didn't have as much divisions. For instance, now New York only had 13 divisions of the UNIA. California only had 13. But the divisions in the north, in New York and Chicago, that's where the largest UNIA divisions were. One of the largest divisions of the UNIA was in New York City, and that division had over 35,000 members. And remember, that's only one of the 13 divisions of the government form. Because what we have to understand and what we've lost in this time, Brother Hassan, we lost a vision of we black people living underneath our own government.
Yes.
We black people determine our own destiny. We cry out, we want self-determination, but yet our ancestors established a government for us where we can have self-determination, but yet we're not even aware of our story. So I thank you for bringing me on to share our story, because we always talk about honor our ancestors, so therefore we have a duty and a responsibility in this time. Our ancestors in their time had 26 divisions of the UNIA in Georgia. Currently, they have a lot of divisions in the UNIA, but there's only in Georgia today, but only one of them is official, Atlanta Division 421. So we have the responsibility to get 500 members in 421 and get at least 26 or more divisions in Georgia in our lifetime, so that we don't let our ancestors put us to shame, in a friendly competition generation to generation. So there's a lot of work that we have to do to build this government and to ensure our self-determination and our nationhood in Africa, because Africa for the Africans. So this August is the 55th convention, and this convention is taking place in Georgia, and this is the first time a convention ever takes place in Georgia. So it's our story, historical, and the convention is taking place from August 28th, Tuesday, to September 2nd, Sunday, 2012, here in Atlanta, Georgia. And brothers and sisters, if you'd like more information, please reach out to Atlanta Division 421, and you can find us at cbpm.org, which is our sister organization, or you can call 678-827-2276. One more time, 678-827-2276, and it's my responsibility to let you know that our ancestors established this government for us, and during the convention from the 28th to September 2nd, the business sessions is from 9 to 5, and to be able to get into the business sessions, you have to be a $2 dues-paying member to the government for the upkeep. So I want to sound out that word to brothers and sisters who plan to come to the convention. Make sure you're a member, dues-paying member of the government, because all Africans at home and abroad are members, but we want everybody to become dues-paying members, so that way you can go on the Black Congress floor and hear the decisions that's being made for our government in the 10th administration.
All right, then. Well, I tell you what, Ross Marvin, you have been a great help and inspiration in getting us to know his, or should I say her, history, and we will never, ever stop the struggle. The struggle continues, and we thank you very much for coming on and sharing with us today. So if you could give us a closing statement, and we will move on to our next guest, who will share additional information on this subject, because we have to get to the bottom line.
Okay. Thank you very much, Brother Hassan. And what I want to leave for my brothers and sisters, I had mentioned earlier that we had to know the pledge to the Red, Black, and Green, and with the permission of you and WACPtv family, everybody please rise. I commit my body, mind, and spirit to the protection, defense, and security of the Red, Black, and the Green. I dedicate my life to the redemption of Mother Africa and to the liberation of our scattered black children. I accept for myself and my descendants the teachings of universal African nationalism, and promise that our children will be instilled with the purpose and knowledge of themselves as African people, in order that the cause of our struggle will not falter nor fail, until all black people are free and united through one God, one aim,
and
one destiny.
Yes, indeed. Thank you so much for sharing, Ross Marvin. As always, Collective Black People Movement. Yes, indeed. Stay tuned to WACPtv for the best and the rest of your life, for we are creative people.